well, let's go ahead and kick off this afternoon. We're talking about personal finance games here on today's webinar. My name is Hilary Hunt. For anybody who doesn't know me, I serve as the director of the Making Sense Project, which is a partnership between the Pennsylvania Department of Education and Penn State University. We've been focusing for years now on financial education here in the Commonwealth, supporting teachers everywhere from pre-K up to high school and a little bit with college. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and introduce yourself. And I've asked folks that already are on to also share what a personal favorite game that they like to play. So these webinars, if you've not participated in them before, we try and sort of focus on and hone in on one or more of these sort of pillars or three-legged stool, if you will, enhancing content knowledge. So for example, we kicked off this year talking about delays in the FAFSA and how that is going to be changed. And goodness gracious, are we ever in the middle of all of that right now? I personally have a high school senior, so this one is hitting home in not such a great way this year, but we try and make sure that you have access to the latest and greatest information that we have on financial topics and things that would impact your students. We'd love to highlight financial literacy resources. So we have, by the way, all of our webinars are recorded and archived and on our website. So we have ones there with all sorts of different curriculum providers and guests that come on and talk about the resources they offer, and then professional information. And I would dare say that, probably today, our session sort of follows a little bit between these. So some ideas for you on how you can use different games in your classroom, and then the resources that you need to actually be able to do that. Our webinars are traditionally this year, we've been doing them on the third Thursday of every month. It helps sort of keep track of when those are coming up. So we have one in March. The times for that one are actually going to be a little bit different because we're focusing on elementary and middle school educators. We're bumping back. Instead of starting at 3, we'll start at 4 for the first one and then repeat again at 7 p.m. In April, we will be doing another update. That was the last webinar that we did in January, was originally going to be focused just on the new proposed personal finance standards with the passage of Act 35 and a new required or mandatory course that needs to be offered by schools and completed by students going into effect in 26-27. We will be sharing as much information as we have available on that with updates and more in April on the 18th. And still a little bit TBA. I've got a number of different topics that we're kicking around for May, but we will announce that a little closer too. In addition, some of you actually, I see some familiar names. Some of you have been joining us this winter for a book study that we just closed out this week on The Richest Man in Babylon. We will be doing another one of those this summer. This is an opportunity for you to participate in basically online asynchronous conversations with fellow educators around a shared book that you would read. Both of these books that we selected this year are really intended to be were chosen because educators use them with students in their classroom. And so both of these books are ones that if you find them appealing, you could use them in part or in whole. Both of them are very easy to use, definitely in just sections, so you don't have to commit to using the entire book. But you could go ahead and take those and translate those into something that you would use in your class with students. So if you're interested in that and haven't participated in the past, do know that the first 50 actively teaching educators that signed up will receive a free copy of the book. So if you're thinking about doing it, you want to do that and be ahead of at the top of our list and not later on. Last but not least, before we dive in, I know some of you were on that webinar that I mentioned that we did last month about the personal finance standards. I'm just going to leave this slide up here for just a second in case you have not had a chance yet to download those new standards. That link that is on your screen right now will take you to those. Additionally, I've got another link here that would take you to Act 35, which is the Education Omnibus Bill that passed in December that includes the personal finance course requirements. So again, if you're interested in following up on those, maybe if you hadn't seen anything that I'd sent out about that before, feel free to do that. Along those lines, a request and something that we're trying to do right now is pull together anybody who is interested in being part of an effort to develop resources to support implementation, both of those standards and the new required course. So if that's something that you would be interested in doing, I would love to hear from you. This is a link to a Google form that will allow you to submit your information and get on our list for further information. How exactly we're going to go about that and in what format is still all sort of up in the air. We're looking right now at doing some asynchronous connection, in particular looking at what resources we think will be of most value and to whom, knowing that, for example, what a teacher, what a third grade teacher needs to be able to look at a brand new set of standards and figure out, what it is that they want to do, or how they're going to teach that is different than, say, for example, what maybe a high school principal needs in terms of trying to figure out how they're going to schedule and staff a required course, for example. So those are both really important things. Had a request there to share that link for the proposed standards. That is at the bottom if you can grab that QR code. Otherwise, I'll try and grab that link again later and make sure that you have that as well. So again, those are the proposed standards. They are on the State Board of Education's website. Again, these are not final, just as a reminder, they are not final until they are codified in regulation. This is a proposed rulemaking, which is working its way through the regulatory process. So take all of that with a grain of salt. There is still a chance that they could change. So anyhow. All righty, I want to go ahead and dive in now. Our topic today is on using games to enhance financial education. And so we've got a bunch of different resources to share in sort of some different categories. So I'd intended to do all of these. I fell short a little bit on two of them, so I apologize. But I will be getting stuff up on the website with those. But I have 7 different games, which is probably still even a little bit challenging to get through in the time that we have. So with that said, we are going to start with 2 games that are commercially available. And so a lot of times when educators talk about using games in the classroom, they're talking about, purchasing different ones that they can use, maybe having a collection of ones that, say, for example, students can use on a maybe you have a variety of different ones and different students play different games, or maybe you get almost like a classroom set of a certain game so that everybody can play it at once. So we've done some of these webinars in the past. We've talked about some of the really, sort of popular games that, everybody knows and uses, things like Monopoly and the Game of Life. And there's some others that aren't so necessarily so popular, but sort of out there in personal finance education circles, things like Act Your Wage and For Sale and Payday and some things like that. So I've covered a lot of those and some of those are in our archived webinars. So I'd encourage you if you're interested in learning about those. A lot of those haven't really changed. So I wanted to focus on some different ones this time, and taking a little bit of a different twist on things today, doing some things that are more that you can do as a DIY. So the only one that you would have to buy of the games that we're going to talk about is this first one, which is called Exchange. And Exchange is a phenomenal game. I'm going to ask if you have, by any chance, ever used or played Exchange. Will you find your little raise your hand and raise that hand up high? I apologize, I'm using a virtual background. Sometimes if I hold things up, it may be a little funky to see. All right, I haven't seen anybody's hands go up, so this is going to be new to everybody, it looks like. So I'm pretty excited. Okay, we're going to introduce you guys all to a new game. So one of the things I like in looking at games are things that sometimes that you can play in larger groups. So that's one of the things that's really cool about this one is you can play with a group or a team of six or a group of six students. The other thing that you could very easily do, I think, with this game is pair students. So for example, you could have 12 students, six pairs of students play this game together. It would extend the game time a little bit, but it would definitely, I think the conversation and the discussion piece of it is something you could definitely do. I would say once you get it down and you figure it out, in particular, if your students have played this, it's pretty easy to play in 30, 35 minutes. The first time that you play it, it's going to take longer. I would encourage you, as with any game, to try and probably play it at home or with some colleagues or anybody you can round up to sort of get the hang of it first. Maybe even have a few students that you teach in like a small setting how to play it, and they can sort of be the leads at their tables. The other thing that you can do, and Kevin shared a link to the handout for today, is share some different videos on how to play things. So there's tons of different YouTube videos out there. Everybody sort of is interested in something a little bit different in those, but there's a bunch of great ones out there. I am gonna just hang on one second because I don't know that I shared my audio when I shared my screen. So hang on one second. I'm gonna reshare. Oh, it is. Zoom is giving me a hard. Let's see. All right. So this is what Exchange looks like when it's all set up. So this is with 6 players playing. It has all these sort of really cool features, these game boards and all sorts of neat stuff that you use. A little bit different than what I think most students are used to a lot of times in a game. And so I have a quick video here. Let's see. Let me know if you don't hear my sound.
Wall Street is a wonderful place. The competition, the chaos, the cash. The stock exchange is my playground. And I was born to play this game. Playing the market can be exciting, fun, and unpredictable. Here are a few ways you can cash in big. You'll want to master the basics of buying low and selling high. Also, if you're in a tough position, pop the bubble. Maybe it can help you get ahead. Don't be afraid to hoard cold hard cash, especially if you want to lobby for additional influence in the market. Remember, information is king. So you can choose to pay the price for market intelligence to get ahead. Let's face it, the market can be volatile and the bubble can burst at any time. So be ready and hold on tight for this wild ride. Welcome to Wall Street, baby. Let's make some money.
Right, so that's sort of like their little commercial for it, right? A couple things that I want to share with you is one of the things that I like with Exchange is I think that after you play it once or twice, you'll figure out that there are ways that you can actually sort of ramp it up or ramp it down. So that time span, the game is played over the course of 5 rounds or phases. You could shrink that and just do 3 if you have a limited amount of time. You don't necessarily have to give students all of the rules. So for example, that paying extra money to see what's going to happen, it's almost like insider trading or getting a crystal ball. You could leave that part out, right? So you can kind of like ramp this up or ramp this down depending on how you want to do it. But this is really all about investing. It's there's buying and selling of stocks, the notion of sort of diversification, looking at what the movement in prices are going to be. And then one of my favorite things are the market forces, which I think is just a really great way of reminding and driving home that idea that different things that are outside of an investor's control can very much influence what's happening in terms of the price of stocks and what have you. So these are the market forces. There is at least one of these at the end of every round. In the middle rounds, the person who starts that round with the most cash on hand gets to have extra influence. And that influence also affects the price of stocks in the game. But in this case, this is one that says oil bust. An oil bust is causing banks to take a steep loss in oil industry, banks -2. So that reduces the price of a share of a bank stock. This one is policy change. Big moves in national healthcare leave insurance companies flailing. So insurance -2. There's another one here, trade deal. Foreign trade relations are improved by revised trade agreements, all securities +1. Another one, natural disaster, news of hurricanes and wildfires sends securities down, all securities -1. So it gives you an idea of sort of, these sort of almost like the chance cards that you think about in Monopoly or other games, where the sort of idea that you can't control everything that's going to happen, which I think is obviously a huge impact on investors, right? We know that, and this is just sort of a really fun way to engage and get students to understand that. So when you set up the game, it has this game board in the center. The price of all of the three securities that you're or components that you're buying and selling, which are banks, bonds, and insurance. They all start at 50. And as you move through the game, they go up or down depending on what individual players do. At the very beginning of the game, I think this is a pretty neat element of it. It starts with these founder cards, and the founders are actually the 24 founders, basically, of Wall Street. And so there's a little bit of background. I think it's like 1760 that the founders met and signed the Buttonwood Agreement. And so these are all actual individuals that were part of that. So David Reedy was an insurance broker. And so if you end up with his founder card, then you start out with 0 bank shares, 6 shares of bonds, and 11 shares of insurance, and you have $150 cash. Another merchant, Benjamin Winthrop. If you end up with Benjamin's card, you start with 6 banks, 2 bonds, 4 of insurance, and $400 of cash. So basically, long story short on that is everybody starts the game from a different starting point. And they use those boards that you see there, have like a slider on them. And so whatever your initial starting point is, so if you have 0 banks, then your banks would start at 0. And if you have 6 shares of bonds, then you would slide that to 6. And it gets adjusted with each turn. So each player has this ledger board, and then you have these little packets. And so the one thing to know is when you first get this, there's just a little bit of setup going through and sorting these out. So every player or pair, if you want kids to play in teams, will get a phase 1 envelope and the 3 cards that go in it, a phase 2 envelope, and there's 9 cards that go in that one. And then the influence, phase 3, again, there are 3 cards that go in that. So it sounds a little bit complicated. I promise it's not crazy hard. But you play then in rounds. And so one thing that you could do is you could have, if you had multiple groups of students playing this game, is you could start off with the setup of the game, and with each of these the first round at least, everybody doing everything at the same time. So for example, you could say, okay, we are going to begin with determining who your founder is. Okay, so each game comes with 24 of them. So you distribute those out. If you have 6 groups playing or 6 people playing, they're each going to have 4 to look at, decide which one they want to start with. So, okay, let's pick our founders. Everybody pick their founder. Okay, now let's everybody start your ledger board based on the founder that you selected. Make sure that everybody is given the amount of cash from the bank that aligns with their starting position based on their founder card. And then looking at that, everybody says, okay, in this round, I want to, am I going to try and buy or sell either the insurance, the banks, or the bonds? And so whichever one you choose, you end up putting in your envelope and turning it over on the table so that then everybody at the same time, so again, you do this all at one time. So okay, everybody make your selection for your security. Okay, now that that's done, everybody, have it down, face down on the table. All right, let's turn those over. So everybody turns those over. In this case, I've decided I'm going to try and buy or sell insurance. So now everybody knows I'm after insurance, which is going to influence what others in the game do, depending on, their strategy. The next round is whether or not you're going to buy or you're going to sell, and then how many shares. So again, same type of thing. You pick the one that goes with what you want to do. So say, for example, I want to sell 1 share of insurance that I told everybody I was going to do something with insurance earlier. Then I would put this in. Again, everybody at the same time then flips it over. Another thing that I like about this game is I have some players, in particular in my family, that take forever on a turn. It drives me crazy. And sometimes, they like, squirrel and they don't pay attention to what's going on. Everybody is engaged the entire time that you're playing this game. So you're not sitting around waiting. Everybody is doing something all the time, which is something I think is especially useful if you want to do this in a large classroom setting. Last but not least, now we know everybody at the table what they're trying to buy or sell, how many they're trying to buy and sell, and which one they're trying to do. And then you get to influence the market. So everybody then gets a chance to say, okay, I want to increase or decrease the price of either stocks, bonds, or sorry, bonds, insurance, or banks. So you pick which one it is that you're trying to do. If you're trying to go +1 or -1, and this is one of those, do I want to try and advantage myself or try and mess with somebody else's game plan, right? So this is where sort of the game strategy component comes in. So at the end of that, after everybody has determined that, those get turned over. The market force card that's on the top of the deck is read out loud, and we look around the table and we say, okay, the net influence between the market forces and what all the players did on banks was a +1. So then if I had wanted to buy banks, after that price changes, so maybe it was at 50 to start, it's going up to 60. I said I wanted to buy 1 share. I would then have to pay $60 out of my cash to the bank and slide my bank slider up 1. If I were selling, then I would reduce my number of shares and get money from the bank. So in this case, you're not trading shares with other players, you're trading with the bank. And again, it sounds like a really complex game. I promise that once you play it through once, you'll get the hang of it, and it's really, really fun. So I just think this is a phenomenal game, and if you're not familiar with it, really wanted to draw your attention to it. These are some of the directions that come with it. They're really well laid out. Again, these are some of those founder cards and what the setup looks like. The other thing is I know everybody is on a budget, and another reason for my timing of this one is it's normally $29.99 on Amazon, and it is right now $12.98. And I thought, ooh, it's at a more reasonable price, I think, right now, especially if you're going to try and get a couple sets of this. So speaking of funding some of this, I know that in some cases, individuals have had success going to local businesses and or banks, credit unions, and others, and asking if they would be willing to support the purchase. You can also think about going to just your administration, or if you have a little bit of money or think you might have some money left over in this year's budget, or go and ask your principal, say, hey, is there some money that, maybe we have access to that hasn't been spent yet? I've got a little idea for it. It's not going to cost a whole lot of money. But here's what it is. So again, you can have very easily up to 6. If you want students to work in pairs, you could have 12 students playing one of these games. So you really could do it in smaller groups. One of the times, by the way, that I think a lot of teachers that I know tend to pull these out is in particular in the coming months when we have things, for example, like Keystone exams. Maybe you have a group or a class that has a mixture of juniors and seniors or sophomores or what have you, and maybe some of those students are taking a Keystone and the others are not, and you don't want to get ahead with with the students that you have that maybe are not being pulled for testing, and you don't want to get behind. Or maybe you've had a snow day and you're trying to keep and align things. Sometimes some of these games can be useful to have just sort of on hand for days such as that. But this is one of those where I would have no hesitation, if you have time in your curriculum, to include it in your investing unit. I think it's a great way to really, hone in on some of these topics. So again, there's a bunch of different videos out there that can help you to learn how to play this. All right, the next one is Can't Stop, and I have featured this one on a webinar before, and I will probably feature it on any webinar that I do about games because I truly love this game that much. Interestingly enough, this game has been around since the 80s. The first time that I was introduced to it was actually a much older version of it that was at my in-laws, and the most recent version that I own is this one. They have it's a really big, like you can see, this is like a big box, takes up a lot of space. They have recently redone the game to actually be on like a neoprene mat. So it's not quite as loud and doesn't take up quite as much space. So let's take a look at this short video.
Can't Stop is a press your luck game where players are going to be making their way ascending upward through the different numbered columns. It's a race to try to get your piece all the way to the top of these numbered columns, be the first one there, and stop your turn to claim that number. And when a player claims a number, all other players are removed from that column and no one else can move up it for the rest of the game. And the first player to claim 3 of the numbers wins the game. On your turn, you'll roll all 4 dice and pair the dice together and sum them up. And there's many choices. Like here, you could have a 5 and a 7, or a 9 and a 3, or a 6 and a 6. In this case, I selected the 9 and the 3, so I placed a runner at the bottom of both of those columns because it's the beginning of the game and no one's on the board yet. But then you have to decide whether to roll again and try to keep going or stop, because you only get 3 runners each round, and if you can't either move a new one onto the board or move up any of the other ones already on the board, you'll lose all progress you've gotten this round. So do I want to introduce my last runner on number 7, which is the one that's most frequently rolled with the dice? That gives you some safety in continuing to push your luck. Or do I choose instead to pair the 10 and the 9, bringing the new runner to 10 and moving the one up from 9 up 1 more? But now we're on numbers that are harder to hit, and it's going to be harder to press our luck. But on the flip side, there's less spaces to move up in order to claim those numbers. And if we decide to stop, we'll replace those temporary white runners with our color. And after even just the first turn, the board might look something like this. But maybe on our next turn, we've introduced 2 new runners and columns that we don't yet have our pieces on yet, but we've actually been able to temporarily move up on the 3 column, which we made it to last round. And maybe we're even to push our luck even more and get a little further. But you're always weighing whether to push your luck because if we had rolled this, we wouldn't be able to move up the 3, the 4, or the 7, where our 3 temporary runners are for this round. We would bust, removing everything that we've gotten that round. But if instead we decided to stop rolling and not press our luck, then we'd move our pieces up to where those temporary runners were for that round. But you always find yourself pushing a little further than you want to because you just can't stop. But can you get 3 of your pieces to the top of the columns before others? That's how you win. This new version of
So, so what does this have to do with personal finance? You might say, like, okay, Hillary, that looks cool, but what in the world does it have to do with anything? Well, I tell you what, I think it has a lot to do with risk tolerance. And so, before I get to the sort of the concepts here, the basics of this, you're going to have 2 to 4 players. It plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. You can do this. I've played this with 8-year-olds before, so certainly your high school students are going to be able to pick this up and run with it, or middle school, or whichever age students that you're working with. This really can age down very easily. But a lot of this has to do with risk versus reward, taking informed risks. One of the things I love to do with new players is just first of all to have them look at this and say, well, why do you think the 7 column is longer than the 2, the 3, or the 11 and 12, right? And you've got 4 dice sitting there, and sometimes with some folks are going to start making some assumptions, and it really all comes down to probability, right? The other thing that I love about this is how other people impact your choices and your risk tolerance, both in the terms of like, oh, go ahead, roll again, I'm sure you can get it, right? Just sort of egging you on. But also how a lot of times when success is in sight, a lot of players tend to take more risk. And then just the sort of variation between sort of the tortoise and the hare approach, right? Which when it comes to then applying that notion of risk to reward, I think it's fascinating. I've played with a fair number of adults this game. And then after we play, I'd say, to what degree does the way that you play this game align with sort of like how you invest, right? So I tend personally myself to be a very kind of buy and hold sort of person when it comes to investing. I don't get overly excited about the day-to-day movements and fluctuations in the market. And that's my personal approach. I'm sort of the tortoise in that case, the lower risk. I don't come in and out of the market on a regular basis. My husband, on the other hand, tends to be a much more active trader. He loves to be able to, buy, sell constantly, right? And take a bit more risk with some more speculative types of investments. And it's hysterical because that is absolutely 100% how we usually play this game. And what I sometimes maybe frequently point out is when we're playing with our children that you can very easily win by taking that tortoise approach as well. But there's obviously an element of luck in this. So I am much more inclined most times to be a little risk adverse when I've got my 3 runners on the board, unless there's like, on a very high probability number, I'm more likely to end my turn and let the next person go. My husband, on the other hand, he's like, oh, let's go. I bet I can make more progress, right? He'll take that risk, he'll take that chance. And it's just fascinating to me to sort of see how people think about this. Again, we play this with families and with my children and their friends at all different age levels. And I've seen it played with students as well, and it's a really fun game. So, and recently it's been really hard to get. I now know why, because they came out with this new version, which took a little longer, I think, than they had planned. But there's a ton of different versions of this game out there. If you ever happen to see one secondhand, like at a thrift shop or at a yard sale, I would definitely pick it up. But there are quite a few different ones available and out now. So On the manufacturer's website, the game is $24.99. This is the new version. There's also a Can't Stop Express. Personally, I would pass on that one. Just my personal opinion. Amazon right now, which I know is where a lot of folks would want to go. It's interesting because the game by itself is $42 right now. If you get the game plus these additional expansions, it's $39. So I just say that as a personal finance or financial education notion. Definitely shop around and look at what you're doing. The manufacturer also has some programs for educators and for buying in bulk, so you might want to sort of think through that. This is a game also that has been remade in many different ways. If you sign up for Board Game Geek, within their files, there's a ton of different versions of this in PDF. There's also versions that you can have 3D printed. So maybe if your school has a 3D printer, this might be a neat thing to collaborate with folks and see if maybe you can print some versions of the game as well. There's even one that that can fold into itself that I think is really cool. I created my own kind of card-based version of this so that you can play this for next to nothing with your students. So the download versions of these are are linked in that handout that Kevin shared. This is what it would look like. So each one of these is a card. This is the 2 and the 12 are only 1 card high. The 3 and the 11 are 2 cards high and 4 spots until you get to the top, and then the 7 in the middle. So you could set this up, and you can have pretty much everything you need for this game in a sandwich size Ziploc bag if you wanted to. The bare minimum of what you need are these cards, which I have in PDF. So you would print these, maybe on cardstock and cut them out and place them on the table. You may, if you wanted to, think about taping them together or, doing something else. But this is sort of the bare bones version. And then you would just need 4 dice. And you need, in addition to that, some things to serve as your runners and different placeholders or markers for each player. So 10 of those per person. You can use coins. They tend to work really well because they stack. You can buy inexpensive game pieces online, whatever it is that you want to do. But for example, with 4 players, you could have, you could use, 10 pennies, 10 nickels, 10 dimes, what have you, or use some other different coin, counters or place markers, what have you. So again, a really fun game. I absolutely adore it and encourage you to take a look at that. This is a different game that I had seen described online. I played it the way that they had it online, and I didn't think it worked very well. So I made my own version of it, and I put all of the rules and the information for this in a Canva file that if you want to use it and put it up on the slides, it's got some fun animations in it. And then I also downloaded that as a PDF. Both of those should be linked in your handout. This is a game that just takes a deck of cards per group of 3 to 4 players. You play it in, it's pretty quick to play around. I would encourage that you play at least 2 rounds. And what happens in the game is you are, I'll show you some of that, but it really kind of just gets into some of the concepts of budgeting. So income versus expenses, unplanned expenses, balancing a budget, and variations in income. So here's an example of one of those slides. Let's play Budget Buster. And then this walks through the setup of what you want to do. So you're going to divide into groups of 3 to 4 players. The easiest way to do this, you could make, these cards and include them in a game set if you wanted to, but you can very easily just have students have some scrap paper. They could write these on a piece of paper if they wanted to, or just, use sticky notes as I've indicated here. But 5 budget categories: housing, food, transportation, fun, and miscellaneous. You could change these if you want them to be something different. And then with your deck of cards, you're going to divide it into 3 stacks: the face cards, so your jacks, queens, and kings; the 2 jokers, so you don't want your jokers in; and then everything else. And the first thing that you're going to do is mix up that stack of face cards, fan them out, let everybody pick one, or dole them out, or however you want to do it. That is going to indicate what your monthly income is in the game. There's a question here: why do you think players in the game start out with different income levels? Is this fair? Great opportunity to talk about, what influences individuals' income, and not everybody starts the month or makes the same amount at any given point in time. Then you're going to take your other stack, which is just those number cards, that ace, in this case, this is one of the things that I changed because I found it to be impossible to play the other way. So aces are low and go up to 10. So you distribute 6 cards to every player. Those are going to be the cost of your expenses and your initial hand to start. So everybody starts off with 6 cards. At that point, then you take everything that's left, the 2 jokers, the rest of the face cards, the rest of the number cards, you shuffle those together, mix those up, and make those your draw pile face down. The goal is to be the first player to balance your budget and run out of cards. So you do that by first putting a card on your housing and your food category, so everybody can do the first round actually at the same time, using 2 cards out of their hand. Usually you want to try and do 2 of your lowest ones. The difference here is that, and then after that, everybody's going to draw a card. On your turn, you can add a card to one of those 5 expense categories. You can replace your income if you drew a higher card. So maybe your income was a jack earlier and you drew a king, so you can swap that out and that satisfies your turn. Or you may have to pass because you can't make a move. Or if you draw a joker, which we consider like an unplanned expense, then you basically lose your turn. But at the end of every turn, no matter which of those you do, you end by discarding. So you continue to do that until everybody or until one person wins, which means that you have at least 1 expense card in all 5 of your categories, and those add up to less than your income. And you've gotten rid of any of the cards in your hand. And so that can include a last discard. So there's a couple of additional rules here, some additional questions that you can ask. And then I put together this slide that you can, kind of like display, or you can, have a printed version of these or what have you for students that help them to remember this. So it's a high level of luck involved in it, and there are definitely some ways to talk about, like, how is this like budgeting? How is it not, right? Your goal is not to exceed your income. If you exceed your income with your expenses, you're going to have a problem. Unexpected expenses can completely mess things up, right? You can think that you're doing incredibly well, and all of a sudden something like a joker comes along and completely messes with your plans, right? The uneven distribution. How is it not? Well, you might put the numbers and the amounts that you're putting on each of these categories is not going to be representative necessarily of the real world, right? So those are ways that this is different. So allowing students to think through those similarities and differences. So credit to the person who originally suggested this as an idea. Again, I changed the mechanics of it quite a bit. So some of these other ones that I want to share with you are a little bit, or just sort of variations on games that you might already know. Money Mission is a spin-off of Codenames. So how many of you have played Codenames before? This is another one that I love. I actually If you are familiar with the game, this is the Excel version. For those of us who sometimes have a difficulty seeing small print, this one is particularly fantastic. But I made basically a PowerPoint version of the game, and it is, again, using vocabulary and terms that you would want to use specific to wherever you are in your unit. But the way that Codenames works is you set up a grid of 25 cards, or in this case, they'll be on the screen, or you could print out a version of this. And you have two people, you divide the entire class or your entire group into two. So you can do this in a whole class setting. And then you have two clue givers, one for each team. The clue giver is the only one that's going to see this sort of like map, if you will. So if I am the clue giver for the blue team, I am trying to get all of my team members to guess and select the blue squares here. If they select the black one, I lose. We lose automatically. The red clue giver is trying to get their players to, or their team members to guess the red ones, the ones that correspond to the red squares. These the tan ones or what have you are sort of like, they call them innocent bystanders. They're they're neither good nor bad, but if you if your team guesses one of those, your turn ends and it goes on to the other team. If your team guesses one of the other team's colors, well, then that helps them. And again, if either one of you guesses, they refer to it as the assassin, the black one, then you're in trouble. So the way this works is, as the people who are the clue givers are the only ones that can see this. They look at this and say, okay, if I'm blue, then I'm trying to get them to guess whatever is in square 2, whatever is in square 5. So you correspond to the squares. I'm trying to get them to guess what's in square 10, square 12, square 17, 18, 20, 21, and 22. The team that goes first is indicated by the colors here on the outside, and they have to get one additional card from the other team. So here's an example. And the way that you give clues is you can only say one word. So it's a one-word clue. And then you tell the other team how many things you think meet that one word, right? So in this case, if I were blue and I were trying to get folks to guess green and bug, taco, weeds, let's see, teacher, book, milk, tulip, and sad. All right, so those are the blue ones. So I'm going to try and think of a great clue that I can give that will get them to maybe do more than one of these and not guess something somebody else does. So for example, I might say lettuce too, right? And I'm hoping that they're going to think about that lettuce is green and it's found on a taco, right? That's what I'm hoping by giving that clue. And so if they were to guess those on the interactive version of this, then I can drag some of those blue cards over and cover these up. These are some examples of ones where these have then personal finance terms, right? So again, this is can be challenging. You can ramp this up or ramp this down depending on how hard the terms are that you use. So again, just a neat, fun game. I have a printable version of different versions of these little cards and maps. And again, you can turn them whichever way, so you can use them lots of different times. If your students are familiar with the game, only take once or twice. I would encourage, by the way, that's why I included this one that has nothing to do with personal finance as a way to teach them the game. Let them learn it with, things that everybody's familiar with, and then apply it to the vocabulary that you want to reinforce or do. Foreheads is very similar. This is a spin-off of another game, Headbands or Heads Up. You play this in pairs or small groups or the full class. This is where you put a card on your forehead, or you can do the thing where you like tape it on the person's back, and you're asking yes or no questions until you can guess the answer. So Again, I've provided some introductory words that you might want to consider, or you can make your own. So you would just, print these out and then, cut them up and give them to students, or you can just, use Post-it notes or index cards, however you want to do that. Picture this as a version of Pictionary. So again, and both of these last ones are also in Canvas or in Canva and in PDF format. So these are really just a way to have students play a Pictionary drawing game. Again, with some words. These can be fun things to introduce, like, at the beginning of class, some of those times where you just have a few minutes, or, you want to do a review for class. Would you rather is a little bit different. This isn't so much vocabulary. This is really trying to spark engagement and conversation. Some of these can be fun, say, for example, at the beginning of your unit or your course, semester. You can pick and choose which ones you want to do. You could just use one of them as an activator if you want. Students come in, it's your due now, right? So what I've done with this is put together a series of slides. Again, they're in Canva, and I also included the PDF version of these. I have over 100 options. So, you'll definitely want to go through and decide, you're never going to use all of them. At least I would certainly hope not. Pick and choose a couple. The way that I set these up, and there's a note here in the educator notes, which is a hidden slide, is that these are a top and bottom of each one of them. So would you rather, the thing on the top or the thing on the bottom? So one of my suggestions is you can have students do thumbs up if it's the one on top, thumbs down if it's the one on the bottom. That's a really easy one to do. Or if you want to get them up and out of their chairs just a little bit, stand up for the one on top, sit down for the one on bottom, right? Or certainly you could have students go to, different sides of the room, however you want to manage that. But, pretty quick and easy way to facilitate this in class. So, for example, would you rather, and I'm going to ask you guys to post your answers over in the chat. Would you rather have your credit card denied in public or trip in front of a crowd? Which would you rather do while you're deciding between the credit card denied in public or trip in front of a crowd? I will read to you. Oh, yes. Okay. For quite a few. Oh, there we go. See, you're all a bunch of personal finance educators. I appreciate this. Yes, you would all rather trip in front. So, like, why do you not want to, what's wrong with having your credit card denied, right? Like, what's the sort of, why would you find that embarrassing? Which one would be worse, right? So you can have some conversation around that. Would you rather have people know how much money you have or the grades you have in all of your classes, right? So, like, which one would you rather have be public information? Or maybe you just want both of those to be private, right? So, and this is obviously students with high grades will be like, I don't mind, right? Or like, it's gonna vary. Would you rather keep cash in a piggy bank or keep cash in a savings account at a bank or credit union? I hopefully know the answer from all of you. But for students, for example, this last one, would you rather borrow money from your parents or borrow money from a bank? That actually in some cases might be more interesting even with adults. Would you rather borrow from family members or from a bank? And why, right? What are the differences between, having to go and ask somebody for money? Maybe they would let you borrow it with no interest, or would you rather borrow money from the bank and have to pay interest, but not have to get involved in a financial relationship and owe something to someone that you know? So again, there are over 100 of these in the file. And hopefully all of you can access. I did it as a template in Canva. So if any of you have issues with accessing any of these files, please don't hesitate to let me know. After the webinars, probably after this weekend, my goal is to get all of these materials uploaded to our website as well in a variety of different formats. So you're welcome to grab them and use them however you wish. I did take and modify quite a few of these, and some of them I took in whole, and so I gave credit to Money Prodigy is the website where I found a bunch of great examples and tried to not have exact duplicates. So anyhow, that is a whole fresh, just sort of stock of questions that you can use and have a little fun with your students. I also think sometimes, and curious if you have played Would You Rather, do you just play it in class, or like have any of you ever had your students go on and then like ask other people, or you could use these, for example, as like a poll question, right? Like you could put it out and have them ask 10 friends and see what they come back with. So lots of different ways that you can use this to spark engagement and conversation, even sort of tallying some results. Maybe some of these questions you would pick them and do them at the beginning of a unit, see where they are, keep track, and say, okay, as a whole, the class said, this at the beginning. So maybe one of those, there's a real easy, not easy, but simple. Would you rather use a credit card or a debit card, right? So before, talking about, payment methods and what have you, see where everybody is and see if maybe their minds change at the end, and have some reflection. So I saw that question about sharing the resource link. Kevin, if you're able to grab that link for me while you to that to the handout in Google Drive and share that with everybody again, that would be awesome. Otherwise, should be that's one of them. We got another one in there. Kevin, I'll find it. If not, scroll right up. There it is. There's the handout. So that is there. Everything in that document should be linked. And again, if you have any issues with any of those links, please don't hesitate to let me know. So again, thank you so much for being here. That was a lot in a short period of time. Hopefully it wasn't too overwhelming. I would love to know before you sign off, which of these do you think you are most likely to try and check out? And if you want to list more than one, feel free, but I'd be curious. Exchange, the one that right now is on sale at Amazon. Can't Stop, which you can buy, or you can make your own version. We have Budget Buster, Money Mission, the one that's like Code Names, with the one that's like Pictionary, the Four Heads, Heads Up one, and the Would You Rather. So I am interested to hear what you have to say about that. So thanks so much. I did see the question for the standards link. Give me 1 second and I will share that here in just a second with you. I'll grab that here in a moment. All right, great. I'm excited to see what you guys think of these. And if there's anything that I can do to help you with implementation and using these in your classroom, please do not hesitate to let me know.